All right. Hello, guys. Excited to get to be with you guys. I'm going to turn, I don't know if I should, if the echo bugs you, you can turn that up or down. All right. I've got Darren here with me. So I've got one live person with me, which is kind of exciting. I haven't had anybody live for a while. So excited to get somebody here with me. So that's good and bad for you guys, I guess, although I need to slide the table over here a little more so you can see what I'm going to be writing on the board. So good or bad, I don't know which it is for you guys, one of the two, but I'll be writing on the board, which means it'll probably be a little more legible, but also may mean you can't see it as well too. So I don't know. All right, so as we get going on this though, any questions from you guys as we get started today? You want to do that? Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I got a question, Russ.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, I'm representing my brother, and we just put an offer in, and we almost got it. The other agent said that they want to give us the rights to backup or whatever.
Okay.
He was going to send that addendum over, and he didn't ever send it over. And now the one that he sent over says, seller's notice to backup buyer of termination of primary contract.
Oh.
So that means we have the counter, right?
So basically what that sounds to me like, you better call them and verify, but it sounds to me like what they're saying to you is that the one that they had that they were going to put you in backup to is now gone. So you guys would be the primary.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
I guess we just never got that other backup one, and so I'm thinking they already terminated the primary.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So they must have done that before they even sent you over the backup addendum. So
yeah, and cool.
It's awesome.
And good news.
Yeah, it's really good. I love it. Cool. Congrats. That's way cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else? Any other questions or anything on anything in particular, but also just on the needs analysis before we get going? All right. I guess not. Okay, so here's what we're going to do then is I'm going to start by, so can you hear on there? Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to turn that down then, but all right. Here's what I want to do is just do a little bit of a review of what we talked about yesterday, just to make sure that everyone is brought up to speed so that we all know where we're at and what we're talking about and all those things. So the idea of what we're talking about in this needs analysis is really just about making sure that you are understanding what how to figure out what a buyer is looking for, or a seller for that matter. Now, so tomorrow actually we'll get into the seller side of this. So I'm still going to talk mostly about the buyer of a property today as we go through this, but know that tomorrow what we're going to get into is the seller piece of it. Okay. Now, remember the top 3 complaints that people had about real estate agents is number 1, that we don't return their calls. Number 2 complaint that they had about us is that we don't listen. And then number 3 is that we waste their time. Now, what really all of yesterday was about was kind of laying the foundation for helping you understand that where that comes from is based upon this idea that we all have assumptions. And probably, I don't think I said this yesterday, so let me say it to you guys this way today. What happens is every person out there, and there's a term for this, I can't remember what it's called right now off the top of my head, but everybody out there, you included, me included, believes that eventually everyone will figure out that we were right. So all of us have this belief in our head that eventually people are going to figure out that we were right. Well, because we all have that belief that eventually people are going to figure out we were right, because we all have that, what ends up happening is that when we are talking to somebody about, and remember, we're going to talk about the buyer of a house for a minute, is when we're talking to somebody about buying a home, we think we know better what they are going to want. And because of that, our thoughts, our beliefs, what is important to us gets in the way of them being able to get what it is that they want. And so we create this scenario where what is happening is that they get frustrated because they think we aren't listening, because everything that we're talking to them is more about us than it is about them. Now, we don't think that. When we are in the process of this, we don't think that's what we're doing, but that is what we are doing. And so because of that, they then get frustrated because we keep talking about things that aren't important to them, that they're really more about us. And so as a result, what happens then is they get frustrated and move on. Now, as I say that, like, to some extent, I'm presenting it to you like, if you don't know what we're talking about today, that you're never be able to get a buyer sold. Well, obviously that's not true, because many of you have already worked with buyers, you've gotten people under contract and all those things. What we're talking about is just a more effective, a more efficient way of being able to work with our clients to help stop those issues from coming up, and a way to help them find the property that they want in a much quicker time frame. See, because without this that we're talking about, so I've got Darren here in the room, and he said he has been licensed 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And do you know how many transactions you did last year or this year, even whatever, either way?
This year, 13.
So he's closed 13 transactions. Well, so to some extent, I would, based on what I've been saying so far, you might look at it and go, well, how did he ever close 13 transactions without knowing any of this stuff? Well, because the thing is this, as we're talking through it, people are going to crystallize before they buy a home. So when I say that to you, nobody buys until they crystallize, that is true. Nobody buys until they crystallize. But how people would go about crystallizing without this is a term that's called information loading. What ends up happening is they have to get loaded with information to the point that they then crystallize. So let me say that to you differently. The way you get somebody to crystallize without the process that we're talking about is you go out and show them homes. When they have said to you, I'll know it when I see it, essentially what they're saying is, you need to go information load me. Go show me a whole bunch of properties so that the information gets loaded over and over and over and over again. And then eventually they'll crystallize. See, companies have been doing that to you guys for your whole life. Every commercial that you watch on TV is information loading. When you watch a commercial on a YouTube video or any of that, all of that is just information loading. They're trying to load you with information so that what happens is when it's time for you to make a decision about buying some potato chips, that as soon as you think about chips, the first thing that comes to your mind is what? So either unmute or throw it in the chat box. What, when you think about getting some type of chips, what comes to mind? Yeah, what kind? Okay, but what brand? I mean, okay. So let's see. Leslie said Doritos, and Rebecca's saying salsa or dip. Okay, but what kind of chips? What brand?
Like Lay's chips or Pringles.
Okay, good. So yeah, Darren said Lay's, Marissa saying Lay's, Fritos. So notice that what is typically happening is what they're trying to do is load you with that information so that when it's time for you to go out now and buy, that you will go buy their brand of chips. That's information loading. Well, that's the process that people will go through to buy a house too. But unless you really came into this business because you love going out and looking at houses, that's probably not the way you want to go about showing clients homes, is because otherwise you're going to have to go out and show them 50 houses. Let me give you a quick story on that. Now, this was before I learned this process. In fact, it was probably the transaction that I closed right before I went into this. And I don't know that that's exactly true, but it was pretty close to closing this transaction to when I then went and got trained on everything that I'm talking about right now. And here's what happened is I had a client, this guy was coming in, he worked for Wendy's. He was coming in as a regional manager from Florida to Utah. And we had over the phone, we had talked through, and we had been talking about what they were looking for in a home. Now, back then, this would have been in 1999, probably, maybe 2000, but really actually maybe even 98, 99, somewhere in that range. What ends up happening is that he's coming into town. Well, we didn't have properties on the internet in 1999. There wasn't like people could go just jump on and start doing searches. So what would have to happen is we would have to be then sending them to the people. Well, I had done as much of that as I could while he was in Florida, but now he is coming to Utah. So he ends up here in Utah, and when he gets here to Utah, we then are going to go out and look at properties. Well, we're going out to look at properties based upon what my understanding of what he was looking for. So he was going to be in town for 2 days. And so I had set aside those whole 2 days to just go show properties. So the very first house we go up to on South Mountain here, for you guys that are in Utah, we drive up onto South Mountain. We go through this first house, and he starts talking about this one particular room in the home that he called a frog. And I was like, a frog? At that point, I'd never heard of a frog, like when in talking about a house. And what that stands for is finished room over garage. So that's where frog, if you ever hear somebody say they want a frog, it's a finished room over the garage. Well, I had never heard it before. And he starts talking about this frog on this particular house that we were in. And he was like, I really like the frog. And I was like, what are you talking? Like, I was looking around the house for like, where's a frog? I don't know what you're talking about. But he said, I like the frog. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, don't you guys call it that here? And I said, I've never heard that term before. Well, so we go look at that. And then we proceeded over the next 2 days to look at somewhere, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was more than 50 and probably less than 60, somewhere between 50 and 60 homes we looked at over that 2-day period. Guess which house he bought? The very first one we went and looked at. But here's the thing, that when we walked into that house, he was not ready or prepared, or let me say it the way that we're talking about in class, he had not crystallized yet. Now, what I realized is if I could have taken him through this process beforehand, there's a good chance he could have come into town. I would have taken him to that first house and he would have been like, yep, this is the place, let's buy it. Now, because I didn't know this process, I hadn't taken him through it. The only way he was going to crystallize is by us going and looking at 50 houses. And after we had looked at 50 plus houses, he was able to say, yeah, I want to go back and buy that first one that we went and looked at. Now let me fast forward. I've gone through this training. I get back to my office. Now, and in fact, let me walk you through kind of this whole process. So I go through this training, which I flew out to the Bay Area, spent 3 days out there, actually 3 or 4, I can't remember now, but being detailed trained of how to train this even is kind of the training that I went through. But really, I was being trained on the process, but I was being trained how to train it at the same time. So I go through this 3-4 day thing, and I come back and I'm so excited about it. And I get the first client, and they come into my office. I had them sit down on some chairs there just next to my desk in my office. And I then start to walk them through this process where I did exactly what I was showing you guys. And I'm going to add one thing to what we talked about yesterday that I intentionally left out yesterday, but I'm going to add it today. And so what happened then is they come into my office, we sit down, and I take them through this process. Well, at the end of taking them through this process, I said, great, let's go out and take a look at some homes. I had scheduled some time. We drive out to the property and we pull out to the front of the house. And this property was brand new to the market. So it had only been on from the day before. So when we pulled up, there wasn't even a sign out front. So I remember we pull up in the car, I parked the car, and he is sitting right next to me in the passenger seat. His wife is behind me in the back seat. And we pulled up and I park on the street in front of the house. And as I park, the husband says to me, so which house is it? And I said, oh, it's this one right here, because there wasn't a sign out yet. So I said, it's that one right there. He turns and looks at it. And as soon as he looked at it, right after he looked at it, he turns and looks over. So picture I'm now him in the passenger seat. He turns and looks over his shoulder to behind me to his wife. And he says, this is the place. And she was like, yep. And I'm like, hold on, we haven't even gotten into the house yet. Now, I had been in the business a couple of years at that point, and I had never had anything happen like this before for me. So I was kind of like, well, let's go in and take a look first. So we go to the, and I still remember, went to the front door. There wasn't a key box. So the property just had a carport. So I went over under the carport to the side door of the house, and there was the key box. So we put in the code to open the key box. I open up the key box, and now that we have opened the key box, we walk into the kitchen. And I remember we walk into the kitchen from this side door of the house. We walk into the kitchen, and he's like, "Yep, this is the place." And now I'm still not like really believing that somebody's going to buy the first house that they're looking at. And so I say to them, "Well, hold on. Like, I mean, let's walk through and take a look at it." So we walk through the house, and afterwards, he says to me again, "Yeah, this is the one. This is exactly what we were telling you what we wanted." And again, I would never do this today, but then I was like, "Well, hold on. Like, I've got 3 more houses that I want to show to you first. So don't get too excited just yet." And so we then got in the car and we went and looked at the other 3 houses, and they were like, "No, we want the first one." Now, today for me, I would never do that again. I would never go drive around and go show them more houses. Today, I'm saying, "Okay, you want this one? Great. I'll call the other agents, tell them we're not coming to look at the houses. We're out of here. Let's go write the offer." That's exactly what I would have done. So, so just know my point in this is when you have a client, let me say it this way. When you have a client that is not making a decision, what you can 100% know is they have not crystallized yet. Just know the thing that is holding them back is they have not crystallized. When you have the person who feels like, "I got to keep looking at house after house after house," what you need to recognize is what they're telling you in a nonverbal way. What they're telling you in a nonverbal way is, "We haven't crystallized. So we're not sure yet what it is that we want to buy." And until they crystallize, they're not prepared to buy. All right. With that, I think, just see. Any questions based on that before I move on to the next step? I'm going to pull up my whiteboard here. I'm not seeing any questions, and nobody's unmuting. So I'm going to take that as you don't have any then. All right. So just as a reminder of what we're doing here is the way that your brain works is like a computer. Given information, it's going to respond accordingly. Okay. Now, the way that your brain stores this information is like this: is the pictures are in one area, the decisions in another, and the feelings are stored in another area. So the pictures, decisions, and feelings. Now, we started to talk about yesterday, and I'm going to do a review about this right now, is that we're going to use 3 different tools here. So this one's going to be tool number 1 is designed around getting them to picture. Tool number 2 that we're going to use is around the decisions they've made about it. And then tool number 3 is then going to be about their feelings. So I'm going to give you 3 tools. So think of it that way. Of what we're doing is that to some extent, I'm giving you the blueprint, and here's the tools you're going to use to build this blueprint that we're going to talk about. Okay. So tool number 1, which we talked about yesterday, is what we would call directives. Now, I'm going to pause for a minute on this, though. In fact, actually, I'm going to erase that. Hang on. Because there's one thing that we're going to do first. So the process, think of it this way. When you meet with somebody and they come and meet in your office, the first thing you're going to do, and I will give you guys these, I'm going to give you guys some scripts today, and I'll get you the copies. I'll email them to you after class. But the first thing we have to do is we have to have permission. Now, let me explain one piece of this. So in order for you to take somebody through this process, this needs analysis process, you have to have permission from them to do it. Now, remember I said I went to California, I got trained in it, I came home, I was so excited. Well, when I got home, I immediately wanted to just share with my wife all of this cool stuff. And so I was like, "Let me show you how this works." And I jumped right into it with her. I said, "All right, describe for me your ideal home." And then she started to describe, and I was like, "What else? Keep going. What else? Keep going." And after a little while of me doing that, my wife said to me, "Hey, this is weird. Like, if somebody did that to me, I would be annoyed because this is weird." And I was like, oh no, like I panicked, because for me, I was like, I was so excited about this. And all of a sudden now here my wife's telling me, this is weird. If somebody did that to me, I wouldn't want to work with them. And I was like, oh. So I called up the guy that trained me in this, and I asked him, I said, hey, so I was all excited. I came home, I sat down with my wife and started to do this. And she like told me it was weird, and she would hate it if somebody did that. And I was like, oh no. Like, so I was now all of a sudden scared to go and actually do this with a client. And the first question that he asked me is, did you get permission from her? And I was like, it's my wife. I don't have to get permission to talk to her and to ask her questions. And he goes, no, you do. In order for you to take somebody through this process, you've got to get permission from them to do that. And I said, well, yeah, no, I didn't get permission. He's like, well, then that's why. So here's what I want to say to you guys is, the first step along the way is you've got to ask them for permission. And I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. So assuming that since I've got Darren in the room, yeah, you're going to regret or be grateful. I don't know, because I'm going to pick on you like crazy. That's why Marissa quit coming in person, right? Did you see her? She's doing this. All right. So
thanks, Darren.
she said, thanks, Darren. All right. So let's assume that he's come into the office. We've exchanged niceties, meaning I've offered him if he wanted a drink or blah, 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 any of those kinds of things. We're now sitting in the conference room. Here's what permission sounds like, is I'm going to say it like this. Now, there are a couple of key things that you need to make sure you say on this, but it's not, this one, the scripts that I'm going to give to you guys don't have to be word for word, but they do have to be concept for concept. So it's the concept you got to make sure that you hit on. It doesn't necessarily have to be word for word, but this is how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to say, Darren, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you a few questions. Some of them may be personal, maybe things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? Yeah. And they're going to say yes. So I'll say it again. And like I said, if you guys will if you want me to email you the scripts, put it in the chat box, put your email address in the chat box, and I will send them to you after the class. But ultimately, the permission is this. So I'm going to say it again, and there's a couple of key things that you need to make sure that you are saying. So in order for us, so in fact, I'll even actually write down a couple of the things here. So in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. So you want to say it that way. Now, I'm going to say it differently to show you what I mean. So, and Darren, you tell me how this feels when I say it this way. In order for me to determine if I can work with you, I need to ask you some questions, and some of them may be personal, maybe things you haven't thought about or considered. Is that going to be okay?
In the role play, I'd say yes, but in the back of my mind, my thought would be, wow, I might not want to work with him just because of whatever it is I'm about to say. Like, it seems a little pompous. Like, whether I want to work with you. Yeah.
So could you guys, could you hear what he was saying? I didn't think so. So I probably should have unmute and done the speaker here, but that's okay. So basically what he said is, in the role play, he would have said yes to me, but in the back of his mind, he was wondering like, oh, you might not want to work with me. So ultimately by me, so that's the key. Notice, but the reason I'm bringing this up and I'm writing down the us and help for you guys is because what I have found is what we tend to say is, in order for me to determine if I can work with you. Well, that's not the message we want to convey. The message I want to convey to them is, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you. And so it is an us. Hey, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, and us is between me and Darren. In order for you and I, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions, and some of them may be personal or maybe things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? Now, sometimes I have found that people are hesitant to say, maybe personal. If you're worried about it, then don't say it. Instead, just say, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions, and some of them may be things you haven't thought about before. Now, let me tell you the way that I really did it, but I don't typically train it this way because people are usually afraid to do it. But let me tell you how I really say it. Darren, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. Some of them may be personal and maybe even a little bit uncomfortable for you, but I need to understand some important things about the home. Is that going to be okay? Yeah. See, by me saying it that way to them, like I'm kind of setting it up of, hey, some of these things may be personal. They may even make you uncomfortable. Is that going to be okay? Because if I can get permission from them that it may even, and here's the thing I will tell you, my experience with this, it's usually not going to be anything that makes them uncomfortable. I have had very, very few times that they have been uncomfortable, but if I get permission for that, then it's typically not going to be an issue when we get into some of the things. See, at the end of the day, let me say it to you this way. One of the things that hopefully you guys started to notice yesterday as we talked about this is hopefully you started to notice I'm not making this process about me. It's about them. By me saying, describe for me your ideal home, I'm not pushing any of my own things onto them. Go ahead. So Darren's asking a question. I'll repeat it back to you guys.
So after you said some may be personal, some might make you feel uncomfortable, I didn't quite catch that last part. I know you had mentioned in the role play that in order to better understand the full picture, I feel like that cemented it for me because before that, I was like, okay, well, that just makes me feel anxious. But you explaining as to why it's important for you to know so you can see the full scope. What was it that you said so that I can type it?
Okay, so what he's wanting to know is how I said that again. So I'm going to say it again. So, and I don't remember exactly how I said it. That's where I was saying it's not so much the script as the concept. But so in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, need to ask you some questions that may feel personal, may even make you a little bit uncomfortable, but it's going to allow me to understand what's important to you in a home is probably, I said some version of something like that. It's going to allow me to understand what's important to you in a home and help me to understand what's important to you as we go out and look for a home, some version of that. So perfect. All right, so we always are going to start with this permission script first. So permission is the first thing that we're going to do, and the most important part of that is us and help. Okay, so I'm going to erase that. Yeah, go ahead, Leslie. You got a question. You can either unmute or throw it in the chat box, either way.
Hi, sorry, I was having technical difficulties.
No, you're good.
So what do you do if someone's kind of hesitant to answer that question? If they say, well, I don't know, what are you going to ask? Or it depends, or how do you move past that?
Okay, so let's role play it with me. So I'll just start with the permission script. I'm going to turn the sound up a little bit so because you can't hear her, right? Okay, that's okay. All right, so here we go. So Leslie, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you a few questions, and some of them may be personal, maybe things you haven't considered, potentially even could maybe make you a little bit uncomfortable. But the idea of that is really, it's just about me being able to understand what's important to you in a home and how you're going to use the home. Is that going to be okay?
Well, maybe, I don't know. What kind of questions are you thinking about asking?
Yeah, so perfect. So the idea of this is we're just going to be talking about the home and how you use the home. And so ultimately, I guess really what I'm saying to you is I want you to be comfortable knowing you can talk to me about anything in the home and how you use it and what rooms are for or whatever. So is that going to be okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Perfect. So that hopefully that helps. But ultimately what I want to be doing is just saying to them of, look, and here is the truth, by the way. The only time that it's going to be anything that would be uncomfortable is if they start to talk about it. I'm actually probably not really going to ask them, like, how many times do you go to the bathroom during the day? Like, I'm not going to be doing stuff like that with them. But I want, the whole purpose of me saying it is I want them to know that it's okay if they want to make me, really, in essence, it's a way of saying it's okay if you make me uncomfortable in talking about how you're going to use the home. But here's what I'll tell you. In my 20 plus years of doing this process, so remember, I learned it in 1999, 2000. So in my 20 years of doing this, I've had one time that potentially that it was a little bit uncomfortable, but it was because it was an agent that I had trained. So in fact, let me offer this to you guys right now. The one time that it was a scenario that it was an agent I had trained in this. And I offer, and so I'm offering to you guys right now as well, is if you want me to sit in while you take a client through this process, I'm happy to do that. And so I had offered that, and this agent came to me and said, hey, I've got a client that I want to take through the process, and I want you to sit in on it to see how well I do. And I said, okay, great. So he had the client come in, and I'll bring this up to you later because it won't make sense to you right now. But at one point in the process, he said something to the client that the client was like, well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have said it that way, but yes. And so for me, just kind of recognize the only one time that I've seen them get uncomfortable was because the agent that I was sitting and observing doing the process happened to be the one that created it as an uncomfortable, but it still was fine, is I guess what I would say. Is it actually to some extent created a little bit even better of a relationship between him and the client. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. All right, so permission is the first thing we got to do. Then number one. So remember, tool number one here is going to be this, which is the directives. And directives, just as a reminder, are describe for me, tell me about, help me understand, share with me. But the main one that we are going to use as we go through and we talk about this is going to be describe for me. And then since, like I said, we're talking today about a buyer, describe for me your ideal home. Now, once they start to describe it, now keep in mind that what we're going to do is another subcategory of this is we are going to use prompters. And the prompters are going to be what else? Keep going. Say more. Or tell me more, you could do as well. Sometimes I wonder if it's even worth me writing because you're probably still like, now what does that say? So directives. So when we use the directives, the other thing with directives that we want to make sure we're doing is giving them positive feedback. Now, the reason I call this positive feedback versus you'll typically hear us in classes refer to it as repeat and affirm. You want to repeat back what the people said and affirm it to them. The reason I'm calling it positive feedback here rather than repeating and affirming is because, oh, hang on, I think I got to sneeze. All right, I couldn't mute myself in person, but I just made you guys not have to listen to it. All right, the reason we call it positive feedback versus repeat and affirm is because a lot of times, especially with a buyer, when you say describe for me your ideal home, they're going to then talk, and some of it, as you use a prompter, they may go on and on. Well, I want to have this and I want to have that, and the backyard needs to have this, and we need that, and we need to want this, and we're going to have it. The room needs to be big enough for this, and my family comes over and we do this, and we then, like, you're not going to repeat all that back. So what you are going to do, though, as part of positive feedback is two things. One is what you want to do is while they're talking, you want to be doing this. Like be kind of the little bobbing dog in the back of the car kind of a thing. Although maybe some of these younger people have never seen that before, but you're the bobbing dog that's just driving down the road. You're just kind of sitting going, oh, oh, yeah. So here's how you want to do it. On the positive feedback, you want to be doing as they're talking, you want to be going, oh, yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, that's exciting. Oh, wow. Wow, yeah, interesting. Like that's what we want to be doing. That's the positive feedback. But the other thing that we haven't talked about yet is while they're talking, you want to be taking notes. So I will also, when I email you the scripts, I'm going to email you this sheet that you're going to use that basically looks like this. Is you've got a piece of paper that's got these boxes on it. And what you're going to do then is, so when I say to somebody, describe for me your ideal home, and then they start to describe it, whatever feature they talk about first in the home, I'm going to put in this box. So let's just say it's the kitchen. So I'm just going to write kitchen in here as they start to talk about the kitchen. And if they say updated, I'm going to just put in updated here. If they say big, I'll put in big. If they say open, I would write in open. Whatever they say about that feature, I'm going to write here. Then as they're talking, let's say they go to the garage. It's got to have a 2-car garage. So now I'm going to go garage, 2-car, and then they're going to say room for storage. So I'm going to write storage, and then whatever they say about it, I'm just going to be taking notes here. Then they get to the backyard. So, you know, you can develop shorthand. So for me, let's just say I like to just do B.Y as backyard. All that matters on these notes that you're doing is that it makes sense to you. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. Whatever you decide to, however you want to do it, as long as you can translate what it says, that's what matters. So they say backyard and they say barbecue, trees, you know, whatever they're saying about it, I'm just going to keep writing notes in there for any feature that they have. Now, let me test you guys on a couple of things. Actually, first I'm going to do this one. What is the purpose of us doing all of this?
So the more they talk, the more invested they are with you because they've wasted so much time and energy getting into it. But also, you're instilling in them that you're not only paying attention, but you value what they're saying at the time, listening. It's just creating that rapport.
Okay, good. So Darren's saying it's creating rapport. You're investing time and listening to them, and because of that, they're going to become committed to you. Right on the money. Everything he said is right on. What do we call, remember yesterday I told you that I'm going to keep testing you over and over and over? What are we trying to create?
Crystallization.
Okay, good. So these guys said crystallization. Crystallization is that's right. And I'm going to keep coming back to it because here's why. So let me go back to this page here. When the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings reintegrate is what is going to equal then the crystallization. And so remember, everything Darren said is right on. Like everything he said, it is 100% going to create rapport. It is going to create a scenario where the people are committed to you. It's going to create a scenario that they're going to sign the buyer broker. All of that is exactly right on. But the reason that all of that is going to happen is because you're going to create crystallization. Now, let me explain to you how the reason when I went and got trained on this, why, in fact, I'm getting goosebumps even as I talk about it right now, because that's how crucial this is that you guys understand this, was this. So when I went to California to get trained on it, I was there, my broker was there, there was a loan officer there was an insurance guy, and then there was a financial planner. So, and then there was one other person, I don't remember what, they fell into one of those categories, but during the training of it, they had then the loan officer sit down with me. The loan officer said to me, describe for me the ideal loan officer. Remember I said to you guys that what we're talking about doesn't apply just to real estate. This applies in life. And I'll give you another example of that in 1 second here. But first, the loan officer sat down with me and said, describe for me the ideal loan officer. Well, I had been in the business about 3 years, I guess, ish at that point. Maybe a little more, but yeah, closer to 4, but doesn't matter. I remember, so here's the thing. When he asked me, describe for me the ideal loan officer, I had plenty to say. Because at that point I had done, Darren, you've been about where you're at in your career, where I was. He said, describe for me the ideal loan officer. Well, I immediately was just like, all right, they're not going to tell me that it's done until it's done. They're going to call and keep me updated. Like I went through all of this stuff. And here's the interesting thing. All that this guy did was sit there and go, do the positive feedback that I was telling you guys about. He sat there and went like this. Oh, interesting. Wow. Yep. Oh, that makes sense. I understand. Sure. Oh yeah, for sure. Like that's all he did. But after just using the directives, after just this part of it, I remember I said to this guy, if you were a loan, he was from the Bay Area, so he wasn't a loan officer from Utah. He was in the Bay Area. But I remember I said to him, if you were a loan officer in Utah, I would give you all my business. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you remember from yesterday when we did this little bit of a role play with it, I didn't hardly say anything. All I said was describe for me your ideal home. And then as she talked, I would go, yep, oh, interesting. Okay, what else? Tell me more. Keep going. See, by doing that, it creates what Darren said. It is going to create a scenario where, just keep in mind, people's number one need outside of food, shelter, clothes is validation. They want to be validated. So because of that, and I sit there and go, oh yeah, interesting. Yep. Oh, totally makes sense. Yeah, right on. I get it. Because I'm doing that and I'm listening, and actually I started to tell you guys, I'm also over here taking these notes along the way. Because I'm doing that, what is happening is they are feeling heard, they're feeling validated, and they feel understood. See, for me, when I did that with this loan officer, what ended up happening is, as a result of it, I then felt like this guy understands how to do a loan. But the truth is, he hadn't told me anything about how he did a loan. But because he sat and listened to me and went, yeah, makes sense. Oh, yeah, for sure. Because he did that, I was like, okay, this guy gets it. He understands how to do a loan. And I remember after saying that and then finishing the training, later on thinking about it, going, why did I asked myself the question, why was I willing to give him my business? Well, it's because I felt understood and listened to. And so at the end of the day, when Darren brought that up and said, they're going to build, it's going to build this rapport, absolutely it is. You want to talk about getting somebody to sign a buyer broker? It's simple after you've taken them through this process, because they're like, yeah, no, I want to work with you. You understand me. You paid attention to what I talked about. See, that's where this comes from. Now, let me give you real quick one other piece of this, and then I'm going to move on to the next. And that is, I mentioned to you, this applies to life, not just your real estate career. So my oldest son, who actually is a licensed agent here at Century 21, with him, when he was in elementary school, and I don't remember, I mean, I guess I could probably figure out how old he was because it was not long after I got trained in this. So he was probably 6 or 7 years old, something like that. Well, he came in the house one day. Now, I'm going to try, this story I'm going to share with you now ties together the idea of how I told you our assumptions get in the way, and how doing this process removes the assumptions and gets you to the truth. So what happened is, although you guys got to promise, this is recorded, you got to promise that you will not send a link of this to my wife and say, watch what, because I'll be in trouble. But here's what happened is that we were at home, or excuse me, I get home from work the one day, and my wife is sitting there, and she had just finished a conversation with my son, who today he just turned, I think I told you guys that that his birthday was Sunday. I think I said he was turning 26. He only turned 25. We were talking about it on Sunday, and somebody said something about 25, and I'm like, no, he's 26. And they were like, no, he's 25. So I don't even know how. That's when you know you're getting old, I guess. You don't even know how old your kids are. But so I had come home from work. My wife had just finished a conversation with him, and she says to me, we got a problem. And I go, okay, what is it? And she said, Douglas is mad at Tanner. And I said, oh, okay, so what's going on? And she said, well, I don't know. What happened was, so they would ride the bus to school, and then on the way home from school, there in our neighborhood was 2 bus stops. The first bus stop my son would get off on. The second bus stop was on the other side of the neighborhood, and it was where his friend Tanner would get off the bus. Well, the bus pulls up, and what had happened that particular day is Tanner got off the bus with Douglas, and so Douglas just took off running home. And as he ran in the door, he slammed the door and shut and locked the door. And my wife was like, whoa, what's that about? And he's like, I hate Tanner. And my wife's like, oh, okay, well, so what's going on with that? And so he starts to tell her. Now, when I got home, my wife starts to tell me, here's what I think is going on. Remember, I said our assumptions get in the way of this stuff. So what she says is, here's what I think's going on. And I remember she starts to tell me what she thought the problem was. And so she was like, so here's what I think we need to do to fix it. Well, if you think you know the problem, but you're wrong in what the problem is. So remember, our assumptions get in the way. And remember, I said, is it okay if we let them buy the house they want? In essence, she was not letting him buy the house he wanted. She then decided, and here's what's interesting. This is where I hope you guys understand what I'm talking about. Once we make a determination of what something is, we will then ask questions of the person that we're interacting with to get them to agree to what we assume. So what my wife had done is asked him questions that got him to say, yes, that's the problem, so that she could say, I knew. Now, can you see now why I said you got to promise not to send the link to my wife on this? But so she had asked questions in such a way that it got him to tell her what she wanted to hear, so that she could then say, this is what the problem was, and then try to go fix it. Well, if you try to fix a problem that really isn't a problem, it's not going to get fixed. So what ended up happening is she calls up Tanner's mom, because they were friends, and she's like, hey, apparently we got a problem, and we got that. And she starts telling Tanner's mom, here's what I think the problem is, and let's try to do this, and let's try. So they try to fix this, and it goes on for about a week, and every day he still hates Tanner. Well, I finally one day said, okay, because she was like, I don't know what to do. We can't fix the problem. And not that it matters if him and Tanner's were friends or not, but I finally just said, okay, let me ask him some questions. And I had to say to my wife, and just don't interrupt. And I'm not going to interrupt either. So I'm just going to ask him some questions, and let's just let him talk, and let's see if we can figure out how to fix this. And so what I did is I went to him and I sat down with him and I said, okay, share with me what's going on with Tanner. And he starts to talk. And I was like, okay, what else? And he starts to talk. Okay, keep going. Okay, keep going. What else? Well, finally, what he finally got to is he said this. He said, here's the problem, is that Tanner just gets off the bus and follows me home. He doesn't even ask if I want to play or not. He just gets off the bus. So now I'm stuck and I have to play with him even if I don't want to play with him. And so I said, okay. So really what you're saying to me then is the issue that you are having with Tanner is, it's not that you're mad at him. It's not that you hate him. It's just you don't always want to play with him. And that particular day, you didn't want to play with him because you wanted to play with some other friend, but he got off the bus and followed you home, and you felt like now you have to play with him. And he goes, yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I said, okay, well, what if we did this then? Maybe how we fix it is this. You go back and tell Tanner, my wife loved this part, by the way. You go back and tell Tanner, after school, I always have to do a chore before I can play. So that way you can't play until you come home and do a chore first. That way he won't jump off the bus. He'll say to you on the bus, hey, call me when you're done with your chore and we can play. But that way he won't just follow you home. Would that fix the problem? And he's like, yeah, that would totally fix the problem. And like I said, my wife loved it because now he's going to go do a chore every day when he got home from school as well. But it fixed the problem. It was gone immediately. It was over. He was now friends with Tanner again. See, this stuff works in your everyday life, not just in real estate. All right, so now, next piece of this. Let me go to the next part of this. So we've talked so far about how tool number one is about permission, and it's tied to getting them to picture the property, okay? Once we have done that, then the next thing we are going to do is we're going to get them to talk about, and I don't know why I'm drawing an arrow here, sorry. We're going to then get them to, in fact, I'll just go to a different page here, is tool number two. So tool number two then is going to be what we would call modifiers. Now remember, so far what we have talked about is using tool number one, the directive is going to be describe for me your ideal home. Then you get out of the way and just let them talk. And then when they figuratively hand you back the baton, you're going to take it and say, hey, I'm getting a really good picture. Give them some positive feedback. I understand what you're saying. Tell me more, or say more about that. Tell me, or keep going. What else? Then they're going to keep talking. Now, how do we know when to stop saying what else, keep going, say more? How am I going to know when to stop?
Their body language.
Okay, so body language. So that's going to be part of it. For sure, could be that. There's one other way, though, that I'm going to typically know.
The eyes was one of the things you said yesterday, but maybe that's part of your body language. But they don't have anything else to tell you.
Yeah, when they say, so that's what it is they're going to say, I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to tell you. That's about it. Something like that is when you're going to know. When they say that's about it, or I can't think of what else to tell you, that's all I can think about. Any of those things is how they're telling you, I don't have anything else to say. That's when we're going to stop. Now, so with that in mind, one other piece that I need to hit on before we go to the modifiers, I just remembered. So when they are talking and explaining it, I'm going to be writing down every feature that they talk about. Now, as I'm writing down all these features they're talking about, usually a question will come up, and you guys haven't asked it yet, so I'm just going to answer it for you. Usually somebody will come up and say, well, what happens if they describe something they can't afford? Has anybody thought that yet? Had that thought?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They'll have a $250,000 budget and $400,000.
Yeah, Darren said they're going to have a $250,000 budget and want to buy a $400,000 home.
Does that really happen?
Yeah, no, never. That never happens, Marissa. So yeah, so what's going to happen then is this. So we sometimes get worried about, well, what if they start describing something they can't afford? Well, here's the piece to keep in mind is this. There are features and there's benefits, okay? Features and benefits. They're talking to us about the features. The features would be a kitchen. The features could be the garage. The features is the backyard. The features is anything about the house. Now, here's the key. Features have a price tag, okay? All of those features are going to have a price tag. But every one of those features that they talk about has a benefit associated with it. And the benefits do not have a price tag. So let me make sure you understand that. Features have a price tag, benefits do not. Let me say it differently. You can find the benefit that they're looking for in any price range. It doesn't matter. So even if they describe a feature they can't afford, which by the way, when I first learned this process, the way I learned it was instead of saying describe for me your ideal home, I would say describe for me your perfect home. Well, I quit training it that way as perfect home because too many times people would go, well, they can't afford their perfect home. Okay, well, then let's say it as describe for me your ideal home. What I have found though is it doesn't really matter because whatever feature they describe, let's say it's the kitchen, there is going to be a benefit associated with that kitchen that they're describing, whether they can afford it or not. There's a benefit associated with it. And here's what I've learned. They will not buy the house if it doesn't have that benefit. So let me say it to you this way. In terms of these benefits is, in essence, I call this needs analysis, but really if I were truly naming this class, it's a needs benefit analysis. It's we're going from the needs that they have, the features, to the benefits that provides. Because they're not buying the kitchen that they talk to you about. They're really not buying that kitchen. What they're buying is the benefit that kitchen provides to them. And they will not buy without it. So let me say it to you this way. There are going to be 2 or 3 features of the home, or really probably now that we've introduced it, there are going to be 2 or 3 benefits that they're looking for in this property that they will not buy if the home doesn't have those 2 or 3 benefits. So let me prove it to you. When you've had somebody, if those of you guys that have gone out and done any showing, if you've gone out and showed a husband and a wife homes, and the husband falls in love or the wife falls in love, one of them falls in love with the house and the other one's like, no, I don't really like it. The reason that the one doesn't want the house is because of, and it's tied to this. Every time they are out looking at properties, they are looking for 2 or 3 benefits. Now, they don't know this immediately off the top of their head when they show up. But when they say to you, I'll know it when I see it, what they're telling you is, as I'm looking at these homes, there are 2 or 3 benefits that I'm looking for that if the house doesn't have it, I won't buy it. So when you have one of the 2 of them say, yep, I love it, it's perfect in every way, and the other one goes, yeah, but it doesn't have X. What they're telling you is this property does not have the 2 or the 3 benefits that they need in order to get them to make the purchase. See, that's what they're telling you. So now with that in mind, keeping in mind that the home has to have 2 or 3 benefits. Now I'll explain to you in a minute here what those benefits are, because I told you yesterday, there's basically 15 benefits. And so anytime somebody starts telling you about a feature, the garage, the kitchen, the backyard, oops, spelling that poorly, backyard, the family room, whatever, it doesn't matter. There is going to be a feature, or excuse me, a benefit associated with that, that when they start talking about that feature, they really are looking for the benefit. Okay, now, so with that in mind, back here, we are going to have, so let me write in here, family room, beds. For you guys in Utah, we'll say basement. For you guys in California, pool. Go ahead, Darren.
So I had a client who, the husband wanted like half an acre, the wife wanted 3 acres. The wife was happy to sacrifice the quality of the house to get the acreage. Husband wanted the quality of the house, didn't really care about the acreage. How would you navigate that pool? I was able to find the win-win eventually, but how would you navigate that pool? Because I mean, ultimately what the wife wanted was a spacious area where she had the opportunity to raise wild stock, but also had an area big enough for gatherings and stuff like that. So how would you navigate a situation like that where you have 2 people that are completely opposite on what they want?
Okay, good question.
How would you look for those benefits? Because I mean, the benefit of the yard is the benefit like I guess I'm trying to depict like what is size the benefit or is size the feature, or like I'm trying to figure all that out.
Okay, good. Sorry, guys. I realized I should just unmute the other thing in here so you could hear Darren. So you only heard part of it. The part you missed is he was saying he had the wife wanted 3 acres, the husband wanted half an acre. She didn't care as much about the house. She cared more about the acreage. He cared more about the house and less about the acreage. And so how do we work through all of that? Yeah. Okay, good. So here's probably the best way I can answer that question is, and this is for me, this is my own personal. So I think I mentioned to you guys about buying the home that I'm in, and maybe I did or didn't, I don't know. But anyway, when I bought the home I'm in, prior to buying it, and so I'm going to think I'm answering it. If I'm not, then tell me. But prior to buying the home that I'm in right now, my wife and I were talking about it. For me, there was a few crucial things that I said that I wanted. My wife, what she wanted was, she said minimum of an acre. So she wanted at least 1 acre of property. And I was like, I don't really want the acreage, because I know what goes with a bunch of acreage is a lot of work. So I was like, I don't really want any of the acreage. But she did. Okay. So hang on. My computer's doing something weird. There we go. Okay. So we go out and we start looking at property. So in fact, let me do it even this way. I'm going to put it in here into this feature benefit thing. So and I'm just going to put big yard. Okay. So that's the feature. The yard is going to be the feature that they're talking about. And so as we are going to go through this process, what we're going to do, and we haven't started it yet, but these modifiers we're going to talk about is where we're going to start to distill and move from the feature to the benefit. Okay. So here's what happens. So she wants a 1 acre of ground. I didn't really want the acreage. Now, the reason she wanted the big yard was she wanted to be able to have a basketball hoop. She wanted to have the amount of place for the kids to play, blah, blah, blah. Yet the home we live in right now has 0.25 of an acre. Now, to some extent, my wife would still say today she wants more land. But for me, I would say what we got was perfect, because here's why. Now, hopefully this will tie it together for you guys. When somebody's saying that they want a bunch of land, you got to then figure, that's the feature. Okay. So in order for me to deal with that, I've got to figure out, what do they want the big yard for? What's the purpose behind it? So you're going from the feature to, what are you going to use the feature for? Which in essence is, and you'll hopefully see this, the modifiers that we're going to talk about here in just a second. And so we start talking about, well, who's going to use it, and how are you going to use it, and where, and how often, and what do you want it for, and blah, 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 blah. Well, so I just told you, we ended up with a home that's got 0.25 of an acre. But the reason we wanted it was room to go out and play with the kids and throw a ball and shoot baskets and all that kind of stuff. Well, right outside of my house where I live right now is the community park, which has a basketball court, has a tennis court. It's got a huge field that's available there. So for me, the benefit of it was for me, and I'm going to start to introduce you to some of the benefit words, but was recreation. So recreation is one of the benefit words. Well, for me, the big backyard was about recreation with my kids, going out and being able to play basketball, throw a football, throw a baseball, all that kind of stuff. Well, I was able to meet that need in the home that I'm in because right outside of the backyard is this big park that has all that stuff. So in essence, it is my backyard is how I think of it. But the good news is I don't have to maintain it. I don't have to mow it. I don't have to do all that stuff. So for me, it met the benefit. See, it was the benefit that I'm buying. It's not the big yard. So once you can move them once you can figure out what the benefit is to the yard. Now, like I said, what would not have worked for me would have been to be like, hey, we're going to go put you in a property that has 0 yard and there's not like, to some extent, the feature meets the benefit, but it's not it doesn't have to be exactly what they're saying. So hopefully that's what you guys are getting out of this.
So in your situation.
Hang on, let me unmute this so they can hear you. Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
So what you're saying is, the feature that you found was the 1/4 acre, even though it wasn't an acre or beyond. It was big enough to meet the need in theory, but you were able to benefit and have all those other benefits you wanted that you could have had with that full acre because you had that community park across the street where you had all those features that you were looking to implement in your acreage anyway. And the caveat to it was you didn't even have to take care of it. It was already maintained for you. So that's how you found your win. Is that kind of?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. What it's saying is that I didn't, when they show up, in fact, actually, let me even say it this way. Remember, this will tie it together. Remember I said yesterday, 10% is conscious and 90% is unconscious? The only reason they give you a feature at all is because they don't know how to tell you the benefit they're looking for. And so they start giving you features that they think are going to, and to some extent for them, until they crystallize on it, until they crystallize on the benefit, they think they need the 1 acre. See, like like I said, for right now, my wife is still saying, okay, our next house, I want to have a big yard. We need at least 1 acre because I want to put a basketball court. And I'm still always scratching my head going, we've got one like that's, I mean, it's further than 1 acre away, like meaning to get to the basketball court from my backyard is I mean, might be a 20-second walk. I mean, or 30, I don't know. I mean, it's not that far, but I'm like, I'm still confused because I'm like, we have a basketball court right there. And she's like, yeah, but it's not ours. And I'm like, well, but it is. So anyway, ultimately, just think of it as the reason they're telling you the feature the way they're telling you, ultimately, it doesn't have to be exactly that feature. It could be another feature as long as it contains the benefit. See, for me, the benefit was a place to go out and throw the ball and do all that kind of stuff. And I have it, but this is actually the 1/4 acre is even better to me than the acre because yes, I have to pay an HOA fee to be in the neighborhood, but I'll gladly do that to not have to go out and spend my whole Saturday mowing the lawn and all that kind of stuff. Okay, cool. Any other questions from you guys online? All right. I'm going to take that as no then. All right, so now let's go to the modifiers. Oh, actually, one other thing. Sorry. I need about 3 more days worth of class to teach all this. Okay, so here's the thing. So to begin with, they give us all of this information. Now, keep in mind, we're not going to use all of this information. So to begin with, they're giving us tons and tons of things. So as we move from tool 1, the directives, over to tool 2, we are going to have them along the way. I'm going to rank. And the reason I'm going to have them rank, sorry, I keep bouncing around on my pages here, but the reason I'm going to have them rank everything off of that grid, I like to refer to this over here as I bounce some more, is off of this grid. I refer to that as the grid. The reason I'm going to have them rank off of the grid is what I'm looking for is the 2 or 3 benefits. So here's what it looks like. So let's say that I had asked Darren, describe for me your ideal home, and he starts talking about all of this stuff. And let's say we filled up all 9 of these things. That the other thing he talked about was a well, since I brought up frog, the finished room over the garage, he wants a frog, he wants, blah blah blah, all this stuff. Well, after he's told me all that, I've now got 9 features. Well, good luck going out and finding the home that's going to have all 9 benefits, because that's really what they're looking for, is benefits, right? So instead, what I'm going to say is, hey, Darren, I've got a good picture of what you've talked about here. Now, I'm doing this after they say that's about all I can think about. I'm going to go, okay, great. Of everything we've talked about on here, though, what are the 2 or the 3 that are most important? So the reason I'm going to ask him what are the 2 or 3 that are most important is because what I know is that those 2 or 3 are going to be the things that make him decide if he's going to buy or not buy. So I'm going to ask him, what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? Once he tells me the 2 or 3 that are most important, and let's just say, since we've got on here, let's just say it was the kitchen, the garage, and the backyard, okay? Now that he's told me that, I'm going to now only deal with on here the kitchen, the garage, and the backyard. I'm not going to worry about the family room, the bedrooms, the finished room over the garage, the pool, the basement. All of those things, really, I'm not going to worry about unless he says they're important. What I mean by that is it is possible that I'm asking for 2 to 3 most important, and that maybe he has a 4th. It's possible that they're very rare, by the way, very, very rare, but it's possible that he has a 4th thing that's important, meaning that I'm not going to buy if it doesn't have these 4 things. But usually it's 2 or 3. Okay, so now that I've got those 2 or 3, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to come over here to these modifiers, and the modifiers are who, what, when, where, and how. Now, there's one missing there. Yeah, I left out why. Why do you think I would leave why off this list? It's okay. I just got to remember. Go ahead.
Because by this point in the conversation, you've already found out their whys. They're already giving that to you throughout, the tool number 1. You've already established that rapport. They've already revealed why they're moving. We're increasing our family size, or we're looking to move for. I don't know. That's just my guess.
Okay, good guess. Okay, so here's what I've found though. What I have found, the reason I left why off of here is what I have found is this. Typically during the modifier piece, if you ask why, it's a little bit combative. It can come across as more like that you're like, well, why would you want that? Like, and we don't want it. So technically you could use why during the modifiers, but when I'm training you to begin with on it, stay away from why. And instead just ask who, what, when, where, how. So now, if for example, so let's just say that we took the kitchen here. So I'm taking that box that we had the kitchen in. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask them a bunch of these questions. And here's what it's going to look like. So if, for example, Darren, the kitchen was one of his 2 or 3, I'm going to say, okay, picture yourself, Darren, in the kitchen and tell me what you see. Now, let me show you why I'm doing this. Actually, I'll just draw it on here. Remember this, the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings. So I'm going to start with on here a directive. Okay, so think of it as I'm going to start with a directive here. Then I'm going to come over here to a modifier. And so I'm going to say, picture yourself. If I said, picture yourself in the kitchen and tell me what you see, is a directive. And I want him to do that because I'm making sure that he's pictured it. So I'm saying, picture yourself and tell me what you see. Once he does that, then I'm going to jump into asking who, what, when, where, how questions about it. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I said, picture yourself in the kitchen and tell me what you see. Okay, well, I see a lot of cabinets and I see enough space that we could have a big table. And I see this and I see that. As he says stuff, I'm going to then now try to use, based upon what he said, who, what, when, where, how questions. So for example, I would be saying, okay, you mentioned that it needed to be big enough to have a big table. How big does the table need to be? And then he's going to either say or not say, or he might go, I don't know. I mean, it just needs big enough that 8 people could sit at the table. Okay, so 8 people. So who are the 8 people that you're going to have sitting at the table? Well, it's me and my 4 wives, and I'm just joking for you guys in California. But so he says, I need enough room for blah, 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 all this stuff. Because if he had 4 wives, he'd need a bigger table, right? I'm just kidding. He does live in Saratoga Springs, right? Oh, Eagle Mountain, even worse. That is where, isn't that where Sister Wives was filmed? I'm just kidding.
This is amazing.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be funny, but it's probably
Don't
not.
apologize.
He needs multiple houses.
That's right. That's the way I look at it. More houses. All right. So I'm going to just ask, so who's going to be sitting there? And then he's going to tell me who's sitting there. Well, how often, let's say that he said it will be because we have my brother come over and his kids and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, how often do you do that? Well, we do it, da, da, da. Well, what kinds of things do you guys do when they come over? So now remember, back to the permission. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. Some things may be personal, maybe things you haven't considered. That's more what I mean by personal. Well, who's going to be using the kitchen? Well, how often do you guys do that? And what kinds of food do you cook? And what else do you guys do when they come over? I mean, just that's the kind of stuff that we're going to ask. Now, the reason we're doing it, though, let me go back to. The reason we're doing this is to cause crystallization. So because I've already asked him all in directives, the things that are going to help him to picture it, now during the modifiers is to get him accessing the part of the brain where the decisions have been made. That's what we're doing as we do this, is I'm saying, okay, so who's going to use it? How often do you use it? Now, here's what I have learned, is you're typically going to have to ask between 5 and 7 modifiers, so any of these modifiers, for each feature. So hopefully you're following me. So each feature, remember there's 2 or 3 that we're going to get features. I need to ask between 5 and 7 modifiers for each feature. So because we started with kitchen as the number 1 feature, and I said, picture yourself in the kitchen, tell me what you see. I'm now going to ask these modifiers about who's going to use it and how often do you use it and where's it going to be and what do you do when that happens and how long is that going to last and blah, blah, blah. I'm asking all those questions. Now, the reason I'm doing it is I'm forcing them to, they've already done the pictures. Now let's bring the decisions into this. What are the decisions they've made? In order to get someone to crystallize, I have found that you typically are going to have to ask somewhere between 5 and 7 modifiers about that feature. And the best way to do it is stuff like this. Let's say he says it needs to be a big kitchen. Okay, well, remember, hopefully you've learned from what we talk about. Is it okay if we let him buy the house he wants? Yes. Well, is it okay if we let him decide what big means? Because see, the problem is as soon as he says, I want a big kitchen, you're going to go to what that means to you. And you're going to assume the size of a kitchen that he wants as big is what it would mean to you in your head. But we don't want to do that. So to avoid doing that, I go to a modifier and I would say, okay, Darren, you mentioned you wanted a big kitchen. How big is a big kitchen? And then I'm going to let him answer. Now, a lot of times what people will say is, well, I don't know how to describe, I don't know dimensions. That's probably what they'll say. I don't know the dimensions. In which case, then I would say, okay, in relation to this room that we're in, and if you're in a conference room, in relation to this conference room, how big would it need to be? And then they'll look at it and go, oh, probably 2 or 3 times the size of this, or whatever, or they'll say the same size or whatever it is. But what you're getting them to do is to make these decisions. So that's why I'm asking these who, what, when, where, how questions, is I'm getting them to make some decisions, or at least letting me know what the decisions, and they're accessing that part of the brain where the decisions are made. All right, what questions do you guys have on the modifiers?
How do you know when you've gone too far? Like as far as questions. With the example of the brother and kids coming.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, I forgot to unmute again.
It just sounds,
sounds-
if I leave it unmuted, I hear
hear
myself
myself
in my ear and I don't like it. So
Gotcha. So with this scenario with the brother coming over with the kids and asking, well, tell me more about that or why about this, and going through those 5 questions, like when do you know when to stop? Are they going to give you that? Well, that's just what I see, or like when do you know when to stop asking about that one modifier or that one? Yeah.
Great question. Yeah. So what basically for me, how I know is it's more of I have just asked enough of the questions. Like, I guess to me, it's more of when I don't have any other questions to ask is when it's going to be time to stop that meeting. Because as long as they're relevant questions. So let me show you what I mean. So let's say that I said, so you mentioned you need a table that sits 8 people. Who are the 8 people? And then you go, oh, well, my brother and his kids. Oh, okay. So how many kids does your brother have? And like blah, blah, blah. We might talk about that for a minute. And then, okay, so how often do you have him come over? And then you tell me. And then I go, okay, well, so when they do that, what other things are you guys doing when they come over? And then you're telling me that. And as long as I'm saying, okay, so, and then the other thing you mentioned, then I might move over to, it needs a lot of cabinets in the kitchen. So how many is a lot of cabinets? And then you go, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, what kind of material are the cabinets going to be made out of? And you might go, I don't know, it doesn't matter. See, if it doesn't matter and I ask a question, what kind of cabinets will they be? I don't know, it doesn't matter. There just needs to be a bunch of them. Okay, well, how many is a bunch? Well, we need enough room for all of our appliances. Okay, well, what kinds of appliances and stuff do you have? Like, meaning I could kind of keep asking the questions like that. Okay, well, what about this? And what does that mean? How many of this? And where does that? And so as long as the questions are relevant and they're engaged in it, you can keep asking. So, and it's interesting that you asked that though, because usually what people are asking me is they're usually trying to get fewer, meaning they don't want to ask. My experience is you're not going to ask enough questions in general. That's what I would say, guys, is my experience is in general, you should ask more questions. The problem is we usually do something like this. We want to skip the foreplay and go have real estate with our clients. All right, sorry, that was bad. Yeah, so Marissa, Rick's walked in and he just said, I still laugh every time I hear that. So.
Hi, Rick.
He's
in here talking. I'm glad that you know why he's in there, because he hears you talking about polygamy and now you're talking about foreplay, and he's in here to like just
hold
stop.
on, wait a minute. I got to turn this up. Say that again so he can hear you.
I am not. I said, hi, Rick. He's in here talking about polygamy and foreplay, and we're glad you're here to like police this.
They're glad you're here to police it. All right, that's awesome. All right, sorry. But but to some extent, even though I use that typically every class, I'll find a way to work that in. Don't skip the foreplaying just to go have real estate with your clients. Like I say that, but to some extent, like really, it's true. Of like, don't look at it as, hey, how quickly can we get past this? So that we can go out and look at some houses. Is you're typically not going to ask enough questions as we go through this. All right, I'll probably be fired after today's class, so you know. All right.
No one's turning you in.
Yeah, that you know of. All right. So any other questions on the modifiers? Does that make sense? Like really at the end of the day, guys, it's just, you got to start doing this. You got to start using it is what's going to get you to the point of understanding it. So this is another one of those classes that I would highly recommend that you come back and take it again, especially after you've gone and used it with a client or two. All right, so now that we've done the modifiers, so now let me make sure you guys are clear. So there's 2 or 3 features that we're going to do this with, but I'm only going to use the modifiers on one feature at a time. So I'm going to use these modifiers on just the kitchen to begin with. So I'm going to ask the 5 to 7. Then once I'm done with the 5 to 7 of these modifiers here, then I'm going to come over here to do what's called the tag. So remember back here, I talked about, so tool number 1 here, this one is the directives. Tool number 2 here is modifiers. Tool number 3 is what we call the tag now, okay? So now we're going to go into the tag. So tool number 3 is what I call the tag. The tag is where we should move from the feature to the benefit. This is where we are going from the feature to the benefit. And what the tag is going to look like is this. What does blank mean to you? Or why is blank important? So let me show you what I mean. The blank is the feature. I'm going to say, so Darren, what does having that, so now remember what we've just done, so that I make sure you guys are clear. We have just spent a few minutes going through these modifiers, the who, what, when, where, how questions. So we've gone and done all of that. And now that we've done that, and I can see that he's crystallizing, I'm going to then go to the tag and say, all right, so Darren, what does having that kitchen mean to you? And what should happen is he should either say one of the 15 benefit words, or he's going to talk around one. So he might not come out and say the benefit word, but don't be surprised if they do say the benefit word. But he's either going to say one of the 15 benefit words, or he's going to talk around one of the 15 benefit words. And I just realized there was some questions that I think I skipped over. So yeah, Kelly's saying you get lucky and they tell you the benefit just big enough where my wife and I aren't stepping over each other while cooking. Yeah. Let's see. Leslie said, what if someone starts to sound exhausted with all the questions? Yeah, if they started to sound exhausted with the questions, then you probably are asking too many. Like if you feel like that's the case. But here's what I'll tell you. Because it is about them and you're asking questions about them, they typically are not going to get exhausted with you asking those modifier questions, as long as it makes sense. Meaning, like if they've already told you something and you're asking, like let's say they said to me, we need cabinets and there needs to be 35 of them, and later on I go, okay, so how many cabinets did you want to have? And they're like, well, I already told you 35. Like then that's not going to work. Like that's where you're going to get frustrated. Is they won't be frustrated if you're interested and they are sincere questions, is I guess what I would say. But again, back to, I have never seen it when I've observed somebody do it where they're asking too many questions. Usually you're going to err on the side of you don't ask enough questions, is what I have found.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, sir.
So the modifiers, so you're asking the modifiers to, I maybe I've got it wrong, but I wrote my notes that you're asking the modifiers so that you can figure out the benefit.
Correct.
But
It's
if
on the
you're
way
gonna,
to it.
but if in step 3 you just ask them flat out for the benefit, really, why are you asking them all those questions in 2?
Good. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yes. So why I'm asking them the questions in number 2 on the modifiers here is because I'm trying to get them, I'm taking them from the pictures to the decisions, and then we're going to go to number 3, which is the tag, the feelings. That's where the feelings will come into it, or said another way is the benefit. So it is possible, Kelly, that during step 2, they actually tell you the benefit. And if they did, then yeah, I wouldn't need to go to step 3. But generally, they don't straight out say it, meaning like going back to what your question, I think, yeah, where you put, if he just said to me, just big enough where my wife and I aren't stepping over each other while cooking, that may be describing the benefit, but they haven't said the benefit. So typically in that scenario, I would go to, when I get to the tag here, I would say, all right, so Kelly, I think I've got a really good picture of what that kitchen means to you and why that's important. But help me understand, what does having that kitchen mean to you? And then what should happen, he may say, well, yeah, like I said, it would just mean my wife and I aren't stepping all over each other. Then from there, I've got to then tie that to one of the benefits. But here's what I've found. Generally, they won't say it the exact same way. They'll say it a little, they will describe the benefit a little bit more. So it's not an awkward thing, I guess is what I'm saying, is they're not going to be like, well, I already told you, it's so that we aren't stepping over each other. They'll usually say it just means that we've got enough space there that we aren't arguing, or something like that is typically what they would say. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool, thanks. And Darren's got a question. Let me unmute.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So have you found that when you ask those modifiers to answer the benefits questions of that particular feature, that their answers for those modifiers answer the benefits for those other features that they're looking for as well? Or do you still follow up questions by saying, you mentioned your brother's coming over, is that also kind of what you're looking for in the yard and your purpose for the yard? Or like, how would you roll that in? Because some of it can seem redundant.
Good. Yeah, great question. So for me, how I typically am going to handle it is I always go into it the way to answer this, I try to keep my assumptions out of it. So initially, I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to assume when I go into, let's say that the next feature, which is the backyard, I'm going to go into it with the assumption that it's totally different. Yep. And so I'm not going to say, because, and here's why. If I said, so is it safe to assume that that's the reason you want the big backyard too? They're going to go, well, yeah. Versus if I just say, okay, now, so here's how I would do it. So actually, let me kind of wrap up and I'll show you the transition. So on the kitchen, I'm going to say, so Darren, what does having that kitchen mean to you? And then he's going to either say the benefit or talk around it. And then I'm going to go, okay, so really what you're looking for there in the kitchen then is a place to show your family how much you love them. And you go, yeah, that's what it is. That's how I show my love for my family, by cooking for them or whatever. Okay, great. So that's perfect. So one of the things we're looking for in the kitchen then is a place for you to show your family how much you love them. Now, notice from now on, I'm not going to talk about the size of the kitchen, any of the features about the kitchen. Instead, it's about showing his family how much he loves them by cooking for them. So when we go into a kitchen now and I'm actually showing a property, I don't talk about the size, the cabinets, all the stuff we've already talked about. I instead talk about the benefit. So when we walk into a kitchen, I'm going to say, so Darren, does this kitchen look like it would work for you to be able to cook for your family so that you could show them that you're taking care of them? And see, I'm talking about it, the benefit, not the feature. Once you land on what the benefit is, you always talk to them about the benefit, not the feature. Because if you talk about the feature, they'll get caught up in the feature. But if you talk about the benefit, so going back to me of, hey, does this house where you don't have a acre of lot, but you do have a field in the backyard or a park in the backyard, is that going to be able to have you show, go out and have that recreation with your kids? Well, yeah. Okay, then great. So to some extent, even think of it this way. During these modifiers is the time for you to ask questions. Like, let's say that this wife that's wanting the 3 acres, this is where you would say, so help me understand what the acres are. What are you going to use them for? So that would be the modifiers. What are you going to use the acreage for? And let's say that it was me and I'm going, well, I want to be able to go out and play with my kids and have a basketball court and we want to have da. Then during modifiers, you would say, well, what would your feelings be, or how would you feel about it if we didn't have that in your yard, but there was a park right outside of your backyard, or there was a park across the street? And what you'll notice is they go, oh, well, yeah, no, that would be fine. See, now all of a sudden I just went from, we got to find 3 acres to, well, no, I just got to find a property that has the room for them to do that there. See, remember I told you guys yesterday, the term buyers or liars isn't true. See, the truth is they show up saying they need 3 acres because they don't know how to explain it to you, but they don't need 3 acres. What they need is the benefit those 3 acres provide. And if they can find that in something else, see, I could have been the buyer that was the liar that showed up saying we need an acre of land. And then I went and bought a 1/4 acre. As an agent, you would have looked at me and been like, yeah, buyers are liars. You said you needed an acre and then you went and bought a 1/4. Well, the reason I bought a 1/4 is because the benefit to having an acre was met. As long as the benefits met, they'll accept any other feature if it meets the benefit. That's the important thing for you guys to understand out of this. Okay. All right. So now, then I'm going to transition. So I'm going to say, okay, so now that we understand what you're looking for, now let's talk about the backyard. Picture yourself in the backyard. Tell me what you see. They're going to now start to tell me what they see. Then I'm going to come up and go, who's going to use it? What are you going to do? When do you use it? Where would the furniture, it's not furniture, where would the trees be? Where would the grass? Where would the basketball court? How do you use it? I'm going to just ask all these questions. Once I've done that, then I'll come over here to number 3. What does having that backyard mean to you? They're going to then say, the benefit word or talk around the benefit word. And then once they have done that, then from there is where I can go to feature number 3, say, great, let's talk about it. Then go back to the modifiers for that feature. Once I've done 5 to 7 of those, what does having that mean to you? They tell me. Now that I've landed on 2 or 3 benefits, I can then say to them, okay, great, I've got an idea what we're looking for in a home. And then from there is where I will go into, I'm going to send you 2 other scripts, but for the interest of time, I got to be out of this room here pretty soon because somebody else is using it. But for the interest of time, I'm going to send you the script, because what you're going to do after that, so let me go to number 3 here. After this tag, then the 4th thing that I'm going to do with the people is I'm now going to talk to them about a script that I use that I'll send to you that is, let me tell you how I work. This script that I'm going to send to you guys, let me tell you how I work, is designed to get them to sign the buyer broker. That's the time to ask them to get to sign the buyer broker, is I'm going to say, hey, let me tell you how I work. Now I'll give you guys, I'll say it for you so that you know, but I'm going to send you a copy of it. Is I'm going to say this. So Darren, let me tell you how I work. I'm going to go out and I'm going to look at every home in the market in your price range, but I'm only going to show you the ones that actually meet your needs. So what that means is, in my experience, I'm going to have to go look at 10 houses to find one that would work for you. So if we're going to go look at 3 or 4 houses on Saturday, I'm going to have to have previewed 30 to 40 before we do that. I'm willing to do that, provided that during the time we're working together, you will commit to working exclusively with me. Is that okay? Yeah. He says, yes, great. I've got an agreement that states that in writing, and I'm going to have him sign it. Now I'll send you that script. But in essence, what I'm saying is, look, I'm going to go out and look at every home in the market in your price range, but I'm only going to show you the ones that meet your needs. That I'm hopefully dealing with telling them, I'm going to have looked at everything so you don't have to. And my experience is I'm going to have to look at 10 to find one that would work for you. Well, if we go look at 3 or 4, that means I previewed 30 to 40. Because I want it to sound like I'm going to do a ton of work for you, but I'm only willing to do it provided that you'll commit to working exclusively with me. They'll say yes, great. Then I'm going to have them sign the buyer broker. Okay. All right. So the only thing I have not given you guys, which is on there, is I'm going to see if I can, let me, sorry, I got to stop screen share here. I'm going to pull up just to show you guys the 15 benefit words rather than, usually I would write them all out, but in the sake of time, because I'm going to get kicked out of here soon, I'm going to pull up the benefits for you to show you. Wrong one. And I'm going to send this to you guys, so you'll have it here. All right. So I'm going to send to you, in the stuff that I'm sending over, this document so that you can see it as well. Now on here, you can see at the top, I've got the permission script. So you'll want to use this as your master and make copies of this when you're going to be meeting with somebody. And what you want to do then, so I've got right here, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you a few questions. They may seem personal, but things you haven't considered. Will that be okay? They'll say yes. Then you're going to use this to fill in the grid. Down here has kind of the directives, help me understand. And then this is the modifiers, where you're going to who, what, when, where, how. And then you're going to find out the why is having that important to you, and summarize it back to them. And then here are the 15 benefits. So basically what you're looking for them to do as they are talking to you, when you say, what does having that mean to you, or why is having blank important to you, what you're looking for is them to say one of these 15 benefit words, or to talk around one of those 15 benefit words. That's what you're hoping to have happen, not hoping, that's what's going to happen, is they're either going to talk around it. So let me just kind of run through real quick. Comfort is like creature comfort. So don't think of it as comfortable, but it's like creature comfort, okay? Convenience is about ease of use. So to some extent, when Kelly asked about saying that it just needs to be big enough for my wife and I not to trip over each other, typically what they may have meant on that is it would just make it more convenient for them, okay? So it's about ease of use. Safety is about physical safety. Security is going to be about peace of mind. Privacy is obviously of being alone or getting away. Love is about showing your love. So like when I was saying, a lot of times the kitchen will end up being love. Is people will, that's the benefit they're looking for, is a way to show their family that they love them. Prestige and esteem are two sides of a coin, like heads and tails. So prestige is how other people see me. Esteem is how I see me, okay? So if they were wanting the home high on the hill with a view of the city lights, it might be because when I drive home from work, I want to be like, this is why I work so hard. Or it's when my friends come over, I want them to be impressed with where I live. That's going to be prestige or esteem. Value is what it says here, is making money. Economy is about saving money. So that would be double pane windows, high efficient furnace, that stuff like that is economy. Entertainment would be about entertaining, having people over because we like to have parties. Recreation is about going out and having fun. That was me, of like, I want to take my kids and go out and play in the backyard. Sex is self-explanatory. I've already said enough about that today in this class, apparently. But just know that is possible, that is something that they want. That's the times where I've seen that come up is the master bathroom or the hot tub is, yeah, Darren said close to the bar downtown. So aesthetics is going to be about how it looks. So if what's important to them is the aesthetics, they're going to get into the detail, talking about the detail of the house or whatever. And then health is about your physical health. So that one could be, we want a 1 level because I have bad knees. And then self-actualization is basically about, it's kind of the, hey, I'm meeting the needs of what I was created on this earth for, basically. All right, Darren's laughing, so let me read the comment. Kelly said, I had a client that needed a large shower just for that. Yeah, I mean, that's just it, is like, that's why it's one of the benefits that's on there. And now also why back up here at the top, we're saying to them, some of them may be personal, is I'm letting them know it's okay if you want to talk about personal stuff with me. So like I say, that hasn't come up very many times, but it does. And thanks for bringing that up, Kelly, is somebody may say that exactly that. So, all right, what questions? Yeah, I will send, yeah, Darren's asking if I'm going to send this worksheet to you. I'm going to send you this and the scripts as well. So they'll have permission. Let me tell you how I work. And then I've also got one that is for after setting the appointment as well. All right, let's see. Yeah, Kelly said she wasn't shy about it either. That's funny. Yeah, so tomorrow we'll do the same time. So tomorrow's class, we're going to talk about listing presentation. And so I'll show you how we would use all of this stuff that we've been talking about with the listing presentation is what we're going to do tomorrow. So, so tomorrow, 9 o'clock for you guys in California, 10 o'clock for Utah. And then later today, I will get you send out the scripts and everything so that you have all of that available. And I guess that's it. So thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
You are
you.
welcome. We'll see you tomorrow.
Russ, are you closing out or are you hanging out for a second?
Yeah, I'm planning on staying on for you. So let me
2
just
seconds to get kicked
yeah.
out. Okay.
Yeah, well, no, and I think we'll be okay that way. I just
Okay.
let me just see if Darren has any other questions, and I'll jump on and we can talk. So
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Russ.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. Rick just told Darren, go have real estate with your clients. All right, you're muted though.
Sorry about that. Okay, I'm
No, you're good.
unmuted now.
So I guess first just tell me kind of what questions and stuff you have that way, and then we'll talk about it.
Cool. Yeah, I think I just wanted to kind of hear what you and or Rick, I mean, if he wants to talk, that's fine too, because you two are kind of like the ones that had brought it up. Like, have you thought about joining a team? And I never really had, like, I've been completely opposite of that. And so maybe I'm at a point to maybe ask, I mean, I know nothing about the teams. I don't know what their daily schedules are. I have no idea about any of it, but I think that maybe I want to ask some of those questions and see what teams you guys suggest and everything like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I guess let me ask, so as part of that, let me ask just kind of like tell me kind of what you're wanting to accomplish, and like what's your time commitment look like, what, you know, just
Okay.
all of that kind of
Like
stuff.
my time commitment is all in. As soon as I drop off like my boys to school or whatever, like I can get started going on it.
Okay.
What was your other question besides time commitment? Sorry.
Just as far as what are you wanting to accomplish? Like, I mean, I guess
Maybe-
ultimately what I'm asking is, are you in a scenario of like, I need to make money, or just, oh, it'd be nice if I did, but if I don't, it doesn't matter?
No, definitely want to be making it
Okay.
for sure.
Okay. So, and so part of why I guess that, hang on, let me close the door over here.
Okay.
So part of why I ask, and you'll understand here why I'm closing the door, is
Okay.
is so so Rick and I have a team actually, and so to some extent, like what I was thinking is I could just kind of explain to you how that all works, and if
Okay.
you're interested, I mean, I would love to put you on my team if but it need to be a scenario that worked for you and me, obviously, and so that's
Okay.
part of why I was asking like what's your time commitment and things look like. But if not, like if you're like, yeah, I don't know if I would want to be on your team, that's fine. I could help you with others as well, and help you out. So kind of just I guess the specifics of how it works and stuff. So pretty much any team is going to be the same as what well, not exactly, but in general, it's the same. Ultimately, what you always want to be asking yourself in terms of a team is, what is did you freeze up? Are you still there? I think I lost you. You still there?
Yeah, it kind of like went fuzzy, but I can still
Okay.
understand everything that you're saying.
Okay, because you froze up and like
Sorry.
you weren't moving.
Okay, you
and so then
froze
I
up
was
on
like,
mine, but I
"Hello?"
could still
Okay.
hear you. Yeah.
You could hear. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So not all teams are created equal in that, meaning like some of them, like there are some that I'd be like, don't ever join that team. But there are others that I would be like, yeah, I mean, any of those would be kind of a fine thing. So but ultimately, how it most of the time is going to work is I'm, and let me just talk about for me. And so
Okay.
like I said, Rick and I work together on it, is we've got a website that we generate leads for.
Okay.
So what would happen is essentially we're going to generate leads for you that would come to you, and the number is going to vary, but typically I like to try to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 a day that you would get.
Okay.
But even without that, I have got what I call the pond, which, so I have about 9,000 leads that I've just generated over the last few years. So some of them are older out of that 9,000,
Okay.
and we call it the pond, and I think of it as like going fishing in a pond. You'll pull fish out of the pond kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And in fact, that's not unusual. But ultimately, I guess for me, what I would say is typically I'm going to generate for you somewhere around 3 leads a day. And that'll vary. Some might be 5, might be 2 one day or whatever, but it's going to vary. It's to some extent, it's based on the time of the month of meaning, as I'm paying for the leads, if we've gotten and spend a ton of money, then the lead flow might slow down at the end of the month. But if there hasn't, it may pick up. So it kind of ebbs and flows, I guess, probably the best way to say it.
Okay.
And
That
so,
makes sense.
and so I'm just speaking in general, that's going to be pretty normal across the board on pretty much any of the teams that are out there. But I would say kind of the difference that you're looking at is, so what do I get by being on a team is really what you have to be kind of asking, no matter where you end up. And if there's not value there, then I would say never join the team is kind of, and so kind of just so you know, for me too. So I've been doing the trainings like this for over 15 years now. And for most of that 15 years, I always said, don't join the team. Don't join the team. There's just not value in a team. And the reason I always said that is because most of the teams, the only thing they would give you was what I'm teaching you right now anyway for free. So I was always like, why would you join a team when I'm already going to teach you everything you need to know? And so that's kind of where I came from. Now, when I came over to Everest though, and even for the first year, probably I was at Everest, I was like, yeah, don't join the team. It's not worth it. I'll train you for free. You don't need it. And why give up part of your commissions? But then when I saw what some of the teams here were doing, I kind of went, okay, no, there is value in that. And so much so that I was like, oh, I'm going to start a team myself and run a team just because I could see that there was value
Benefits and the value
in it. And in fact, so here's what's funny is, so I mentioned, and I think you've heard before, my son is an agent here. Well,
Yes.
when my son said he was going to get his license, usually people would come to me and say, if I was your son or if I was your daughter, what would you tell me to do as a new agent getting started? Well, since I came here, that has totally changed. So here's what I'll tell you. With my son, what I did is I said to him, you can't be on my team, because I was just like, with my own son, it's not going to work. So I was just like, you're going to look to me as dad. I'm going to treat you as my son, and it just won't work. So I said, but you 100% need to go on a team. And so I lined him up an interview with one of the teams, and I just said, go talk to them. And if they want to hire you, great. But if you're going to do real estate, you got to be on a team, is what I told him. So that kind of just lets you know where for my own son,
Okay.
I said, you need to be on a team. So
Okay.
versus, like I said, 5 years ago, I would have said, no, you're not going on a team. I'll tell you what to do. But I think the difference is, in the past, what I would see people do on a team was, like I said, it was more of like, yeah, I'm there to help you and answer your questions. Well, that to me wasn't the value. But once I saw and once I learned how to go and generate the leads to give to people, I'm like, there's value in that now. And then specifically, even more so than that, is being able to train somebody how to convert those leads is crucial, because it doesn't do any good to get a lead if you can't convert it.
Agreed.
And so anyway, so typically the way that the teams work, and just know, like, no matter what, like, I'm just going to lay it out to you, the truth. And
Thank you.
explain to
That's
you
why I'm
how
asking you.
Yeah. And I'm just going to explain how it works. And if afterwards you're interested and say, hey, I would be interested in talking to you more about being on your team, great. If you say, I want to be on a team, but not yours, I'm not going to be offended, just so you know that.
I probably wouldn't
would-
say that.
I know, but if you did, I wouldn't be offended. And if you said, hey, I'm not interested in the team at all, but I still want your help, I'm happy to do that too. So just know that
okay.
that's where I'm at. Okay. So,
Thank you.
so typically here's how it will work is, when you join a team, what's the split that you're on right now with the company?
I think it's I do not remember. I haven't looked at that for like 2 months, but I believe it's like 76
70-30
to
or-
79, something like that.
Okay.
I think it.
So
Yeah,
I'm going to try to slide this a little closer, because I'm going to write on the board so you can see. But
maybe it's 73. I better get back to you on
it's
that.
probably 70-30. And it doesn't
Okay.
matter too much, because if you go on a team, it's going to change.
Mhm.
But it changes for the better. But, well, I'll explain it. So let's
Okay.
just say that you're on a 70-30 right now. Okay.
Okay.
So you're on a 70-30 split. When you join a team, it changes to an 86-14. So your split goes up to an 86-14. And right now you're probably paying $99 a month to the company.
I think that starts in January.
Okay, well, that'll go away. That won't happen. So that goes
Okay.
away. So the team pays that for you. So there's no fee for that. Your
Okay.
split changes to an 86-14. Then how it works from there is, let's say if it's a lead that I were to give to you, or I should just say that the team gives to you. Now, this will vary a little bit from team to team, but I'll kind of give you the range. But if the team gives you a lead, then what happens, and I'll show you the breakdown of this, then 60% of that commission goes to you, 40% goes to the team leader for generating the lead. So let's just say that it was a $10,000 commission here, just because that'll make the numbers easier.
Okay.
You're on an 86-14, but this 86-14 doesn't kick in till after this. So let's just say that it was a $10,000 commission. You're going to get $6,000 to begin with. The team gets $4,000. Then of that, you're going to end up then with 86% of the $6,000, and the company ends up with 14% of the $6,000. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's if they give you a lead. If it's your own, something you generate on your own or from your SOI. So when I say on your own, meaning like from door knocking or just calling, or you just open your mouth at the store and talk to somebody, then it's 80% of it goes to you, 20% goes to the team. So back to this 10,000, you're going to get 8,000 and then split it 86-14, and 2,000 goes to the team.
Say that part one more time. Sorry. So the 80% and the 20%. So 80% is mine, 20% is to the team. Got it.
And then from there, it's going to break down. So let me actually just run the numbers to show you what that looks like.
Okay.
Let me get my calculator up. So in this scenario, if the team gave you the lead, and you converted one of those, you're going to get 6,000 of it. So times 0.6, so 6,000 and then times 0.8 because of the franchise fee. So you're going to end up here with $4,800 out of that commission. If it's one that you generated on your own, came from your SOI or whatever, then you're going to take the 8,000 times 0.8. So you'll end up with 6,400 on that same deal. But here's the thing, the way that I always say to think about it is that the way you want to think about it is that you should be doing more transactions. So yes, you end up with a little bit less money per transaction, but you should do more transactions and quicker because of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if let's do this same scenario of this 10,000 here. If you're on a 70-30, which verify that, because a lot of times new agents start on a 50-50. But so you might, if you're on a 50-50, this is a no-brainer to join the team. But if you're on a 70-30, it may not be as much of a no-brainer, except for the fact of that you should do more transactions. So can you see what I'm, yeah.
Yeah.
So
10,000.
you got the 7,000 here and the company ends up with 3,000. Well, that's not true. Let me do this because you got the franchise fee. Come on. So if you're on, out of the 10,000, if you're on a 70, you're really on a 64 because of the franchise fee. There's a 6% franchise fee. So yeah, it's 6,400. So it's actually the exact same. If it's at least, so here's how I guess I would say to think of it. By joining a team,
that's crazy.
Yeah, by joining a team, your commission goes up. So even though you're giving 20% to the team, you'll end up with the same amount of money as you would have gotten if you're on a 70-30. If you're on a 50-50, then this is going to be more like 4,400 over here,
Yeah.
But
that is crazy to see that number just equal out.
Yep. That's why to me that's why to some extent, when you look at it, you go, oh, but then I got to give away part of it over here. It's like, well, yeah, but you still end up in the same spot on any deal you bring to the table. You're ending up in the exact same position you would have been, but you now also have access to these other leads that you wouldn't have had in other transactions. So yes, you end up with less on those, but you'll also do more.
Go ahead. Yeah, an extra 2 to 5 leads a day. That's huge.
Yeah. And then we would work with you on how to convert them in that sense. So the key thing, and we can get more into this if you decide it's something you want to do, but here's what I have found. And this part I would say is going to be, that part, what I just wrote on the board is going to be pretty much the same on just about any team. There are some that do 50-50 instead of 60-40, that will do a 50-50s, which takes a little bit more even from you. And then there's a couple of teams which I would probably try to keep you away from, that like you only end up with 25% and they keep 75. Like it's
Holy
kind of
crap.
Yeah. I mean, we did have one agent though that was doing that she still was making like 200,000 a year. So like you kind of have to sometimes look at it and go, well, as long as I'm making 200,000, I don't care, but
Wow.
but I usually kind of steer away from that team just because it's, in my opinion, it's taking advantage too much of you, So anyway, for me, here's what, so now I'm speaking specifically for me and Rick on what we do. So Rick and I actually have two separate teams, but as far as the lead generation, it's the same website and everything. And really, even with that, we still work closely together on it, meaning like, so every day, when you've heard me talk about every day at 9 o'clock, I'm down on the second floor making calls. I'm down there making calls I'll do it with anybody, but I tell my team, show up and make the calls, so that I'm there actually typically to coach them, but I'll coach others too. So like I said, when I offered that of, hey, show up at 9 o'clock and I'll listen to you and I'll help you, I totally will. But for sure, I'm telling my team, show up and be here. Now, not everyone does show up at 9 to do it. In fact, the time when I require it is more of, if you're not producing, then I want you to be there so I can help you and hear what you're saying and doing. So I would say there's one or two people that I have show up between Rick and I's team on a daily basis. There's one or two, that occasionally three, but it's typically of, hey, if you want me to listen to you and you want help. So, but here's what I've found is, here's the secret. This is some of the secret sauce stuff that maybe I shouldn't tell you.
I'm writing it
You
down.
tell me
What's
if you
the
want to,
secret sauce? Oh,
But ultimately, on these leads that I'm going to generate for you, if you will set aside an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, minimum. Now you could do more than that, but a minimum of an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, you'll do transactions. And so what I ask is sometime between 8 and 10 that you do at least an hour of calling, and then in the evening. And this one is harder to do, but and again, it's not like I'm not checking on you to see if you're doing it per se, meaning like I'm not checking every day, are you doing it? But if you came to me or you're not producing, the first question I would be asking you is, are you making calls in the afternoon? And a lot of times people don't. And where that comes from, by the way, is Harvard did a study, excuse me, it wasn't Harvard, it was MIT. MIT did a study of internet leads. And what they found is the best time to contact people is either between 8 and 10 or 4 and 6. Those are your two best times. So the reason I say try twice a day is because some of those people you could get a hold of between 8 and 10. Others are never going to answer between 8 and 10, but between 4 and 6, they will. And so what I have found is, as you get those 3 to 5 leads every day, if you'll try them once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and then again if you don't get them the next day, you try them once in the morning and once in the afternoon. So Rick just walked back in here. He was distracting someone. So I'm going to put it on to where he can hear you.
hi, Rick. I can see like an eyeball.
So anyway, what we have found is, if you will try twice a day on the people for a 2-week period. So every lead that I would give you, my expectation would be for 2 weeks, you're going to try them twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Now, like I said, especially since I know you're doing baseball, there's going to be days where you're like, got baseball game today, can't call this afternoon. Like, that's fine. I get it. But just as often as you can, if you will call them twice a day, you'll get production. You'll turn transactions and stuff. So even this morning, Rick and I were down there making calls, and we'll sit there and make calls with the agents. And today I set an appointment for one of the agents tomorrow here at the office at 4 o'clock. So, and I didn't do it for me. So to some extent, that's why when you look at the 60-40,
like, especially early on, I'm going to sit there and coach you on it, and or Rick or I are going to actually even set the appointment for you to meet with the person. And Rick had one today that wasn't an appointment, but it's a solid, hey, we want to do something, call us in January.
Well, what's fascinating is the lady, sit there and give all the reasons of why she didn't want to work. And it was no 3 times. But as we provided value and actually showed those who were there listening to us calling, found a different approach. And, and the difference is you get to see somebody who's been doing this a long time actually stay in the lane, and regardless of what they're saying, but willingly, they asked me for my email and to send me their information they were working with another agent, and now it's potentially going to be working with us. So at the end of the day, it's really about you being able to close more transactions. People get caught up in all the time, and you may have covered this already, and I apologize. Okay.
The fees.
Yeah, well, yeah, but they get caught up in, look, it's costing me to do this much bit. Well, think about opening up a store, putting the product on the shelf, and actually now go spending the money for advertisement just to get that product up and rolling. We've done all that. We've shelled out the money to actually get that business up and running, and it's a lot. So in order to keep it going, that's kind of the way the structure works with pretty much any team. The beauty is, on our team, you don't compete against us. We actually
Good, because I'd lose.
Well, our intent is to make you wealthy. Our intent is to get you so good at this that someday you can go out and do it on your own. And that's primarily one of the reasons we started doing this, is we felt like it was worth it for us to go ahead and, spend the investment to actually get this up and going and train people. And here's the thing, we don't just ask anybody. We don't. We want people we believe that we can really mold, shape, and that can actually go the distance. So it kind of puts you in that light of, we believe in you. And that's makes it exciting for us, because we have years of experience of actually taking people and doing that. And so at the end of the day, it's really what I will tell people. It's about you being able to put more in your pocket. And if you're putting more in your pocket at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you're paying me, as long as you're making more. And that's truly what it's about. So
That's awesome.
It'd be fun if you choose to do it. Would love to have you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I think that's huge. Like I said, before you guys even said, are you joining a team? I'm like, no, I'm the one that told people get off of teams. But now that I'm doing this full time and not having my other job be my full time and this be my part time, it kind of feels like I'm starting over, which, that's one of the reasons I came to Century 21, is to start over and get the training and everything. But I hadn't necessarily thought about being on a team, and I had no idea that you guys had a team at all whatsoever.
Yeah, and to some extent, I kind of don't say a whole lot about it, just because especially with training new agents, like most of them, I want to be on your team, and I want to be a little bit selective that way. So anyway, so that's why we approached you before, of like, what are you thinking on a team?
Now we've got to throw the bait in the water and see what happens to people we are interested in having, because we would get slammed on a daily basis because we
everyone
don't
wanting to do it.
Yeah. We help you do the business. We want you to have the business.
Yeah.
And that's a little unusual. So.
Well, I want it and need it, and I definitely want the transactions. So maybe when do you guys want to meet, so I can talk to you, I guess, a little bit more in depth about it, or see what the next steps are?
Whenever works for you. So yeah, it really just kind of, at this point, I would just say, if you're interested and want to do it, and like I told you before, if you say, yeah, I want to do it, but I would want to talk to some other teams, that's fine. Like I don't have a problem with that. So, but if you're saying, hey, I want to find out more or whatever. So kind of for me, next step would be just, we've got an agreement that we would have you just sign that, and basically just explains the way the commission breakdown and everything is. And the reason being is I put one of my son's friend on my team, and then he went and closed a couple of SOI deals. And I was like, hey, I never got paid. What did you tell the transaction coordinator to put that on for? And he was like, well, I never agreed to pay you on my SOI. And I was like, yeah, you did. So after I learned my lesson on that one of like, No, I make everybody sign the agreement. So we'd
Of
answer any
course.
questions you have you sign the agreement. And then from there, I've got some training videos on our system that we use that I
Okay.
would send to you. Have you start watching those. And then once you've watched those, I will get you set up in the system. And well, I'll get you set up on the system as soon as you sign the agreement. But you would
Okay.
watch the videos and then you could kind of follow along on the system. And then we'll just get you rocking and rolling.
Okay, I think that sounds amazing. Like honestly, more transactions, especially getting them quicker would be super beneficial.
Yeah. Okay, so just let me know. Hang on one second. We need to find out though, because if Danette needs us helping.
She's not here.
Okay, then that's fine. I need to go get some numbers then.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Okay,
Sorry.
well,
No, you're good. I
So,
think it's
yeah,
your
I
guys'
would
lunchtime.
yeah, no, yeah, and that's fine. I'm not worried about that. But so yeah, I would say just you kind of kick it around, and if it's something you want to do, and then just let me know. And
Just come in and say I'm ready. Okay. As far as you guys having two teams, is this like a Grays team? I could get team A and team B, or how do you guys like? What
Good
is it?
no, we actually just run it together. So like,
Okay.
it really kind of doesn't matter. In fact, we've talked about, and I think I need to ask Rick again. He's gone now, but I kind of almost thinking in January that we just combine it and just do it as one, and just
Okay.
because really, in essence, initially I was like, I wanted them separate because I was kind of like that way. If I decide I want to do my own thing, or he decides he wants to do his own thing, we know who's on whose team and all that. But we've been doing it now for like 4 years. I'm like, I think we probably would have already split it if we were going to. So
Awesome. Okay. So
Okay.
good to know. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much for letting me steal your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're good.
And
Talk to you
then
later.
I'll be in class on Thursday.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Have a good afternoon. Thanks.
See you. Bye.